Andi cooks. You know, let's go ahead and bring Andi on. We're going to make her come on early. We're going to get her talking about this. There she is.
Everyone.
Hi.
I love this topic. We were just talking about this on the Job Father last night. And so about this is your time. I know as a recruiter, I actually thrived during this season because every other recruiter was like going on vacation and I'm like working double time. And I got more placements this time because especially from Thanksgiving to December, they're really stacking up for January 1 starts. So
yes, 100%.
This is your time to shine.
Yes. And go ahead, Susan.
Every interview I have got. So, I've been very picky on my job search as to what I'm going. So I'm not doing the spraying and praying. I'm targeting those jobs that I am qualified for, that I want to do, and that I can do. And every interview I've gotten resulted in me from sending an extra message to whatever recruiter I could find in the company, whoever I could figure out would be the best fit. In one case, I applied for the job. I sent a LinkedIn mail to the head of talent acquisition. Within 3 hours, I had an interview scheduled for the next day.
Wow. Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And that's a perfect example. And by the way, guys, just so you know who Andi Cook is. So she spent forever in recruiting on my side of things, right? On the side of things that I typically work in. And then she said, nope, I'm going to go help the job seekers. So she jumped ship, started her own company. It's skyrocketed. And so now what she does is she actually works with candidates, helping them to land jobs, whether it's, fixing your resume, ramping up your LinkedIn profile and teaching you how to effectively search. So what I want to hear from you first and foremost, before we jump into the communication side of things, what are your tips for job seekers right now in terms of being effective in their search?
So I'm that crazy job search strategist who teaches people to go out there and you can't have traction without action. So we've actually had 11 landings in the last 10 days. And so
congratulations.
Amazing seeing the people, and we celebrate every single one of them. We put a name on a wall. We have this giant landings wall to remind us why we do what we do. So just so you know, there are people landing. It's happening, but almost all of our landings came from online applications and or LinkedIn, either somebody reaching out to you on LinkedIn or applying for jobs. So when we're looking at that, of how to navigate that process, you have to get in motion. Your full-time job becomes finding a job, but it's not just the application process. It's setting up a LinkedIn profile that creates you as an expert. And this is where people get really leery about LinkedIn. And here's what I will tell you. I'm not trying to make you an influencer. Your LinkedIn should be supporting evidence for your resume, that it's an extension of your experience, that when I go there, I'm like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. I see them posting content that is about industry trends, and look at their comments on other people's posts. Look how motivational they are. There's all these great things that we have at our disposal. So when you combine a powerful resume using branding language that represents who you are, then it results in landing jobs, because nobody wants to be catfished, right? So if you have language on your resume that's not in your voice, meaning somebody wrote your resume for you, not with you, then oftentimes when you get in front of them, it creates this kind of disconnect between what they read and who they hear. So make sure your profile and your resume is in your voice, using words that best tell your career story. So there's not this disconnect and they don't feel catfished. Also,
and by the way, guys,
your prom picture from high school on your LinkedIn profile.
Oh yeah, don't do that. That's so weird. Okay, you have 30 years of experience, but you have an 18-year-old on your. Okay. Yes. Also, don't put sexy pictures. That's weird.
It's actually not sexy, turns out.
Yeah, it's not. No, no, it's not sexy. It's very creepy. Do not do that.
These are what we call bathing suit parts. If your bathing suit should cover it, it shouldn't probably be part of it.
It should not be in your LinkedIn.
Just throwing that out there.
Nope. And I will, I did want to circle back to something that you talked about making sure that your resume is in your voice. I have talked to so many people, I can't even tell you lately, that paid for a service that never even got on the phone with them to create their resume. Mm-hmm.
This is how I feel about this. My facial Tourette. Man, like I am fighting this. And just because they tell you it's ATS compliant doesn't mean it is. So I really, and on that, I will I will do a free consult to tell you yes or no on that. But if somebody wrote your resume without your input, you are the expert on your job. You're the expert on your career. I can't tell your story without you. And so I talked to somebody yesterday. I'm like, do you really type 75 words a minute? And they're like, no, actually, I don't. I'm like, get it off your resume. They're like, oh, somebody else wrote that for me. I'm like, no. So,
okay. So rule number one in communication in the job search. Okay. Don't lie.
Turns out.
Don't do it. You know what? Yeah. It turns out that's really dumb and ineffective. So don't do it. Okay. Do not lie in your job search. It's not effective.
There's no coming back from that.
No. And Susan,
it's not necessary.
Susan, I want to say, by the way, is a shining example of what you talked about posting really great content on LinkedIn that shows her expertise, that motivates other people, that is actually thought-provoking. And I do not know what a thought leader actually is. That's one of those that makes me get facial Tourette's when I see that. But Susan certainly does provoke thought very often. So guys, if you want an example of what Andy's talking about, either connect with Andi, all right, connect with me, or connect with Susan. You'll get three very different and very valid examples of what she's talking about, okay?
But because we have three different brands, I love that you just use that as an example. None of them are more right or wrong than the other. It's three different brands and three different intentions out there, and I love that. So
it's absolutely really strong. So the next thing I want to talk about with you about, because hiring in communication, hiring is so important, and on both sides, right? Yeah. And one of the things that I preach to people is communicate value on both sides of the aisle. So from my perspective, from the recruiting perspective, what that should look like is an effective job description that is also condensed. Do not put a novel on your job description, hiring managers. Nobody's going to read that. It is highly ineffective. Don't do it. And communicate salary. Be open, be direct, talk about benefits, talk about the company culture, that type of thing. Full disclosure, give an accurate picture of the day-to-day. That type of thing is what's actually helpful. Don't say something's a requirement that's not, and don't say something is preferred that's a requirement.
Right.
Duh, right?
Honest communication.
Honest communication. On the recruiting side, you also need to be following up promptly, people. Okay. You need to be getting back, like Susan said, within 3 hours. If somebody's on LinkedIn, and recruiters, you should always be on LinkedIn. HR, you should be on LinkedIn too. Respond. Get out there with those good people. You could snatch them up, and showing enthusiasm in a candidate will land them quicker than anything else. Now, on the candidate side, let's start with you, Susan. What are some of your tips? Because you've landed some interviews pretty quickly and made it pretty far in some processes. So what did you do or what did you change about your approach, whatever your advice is, to start landing those jobs more effectively, or landing those interviews more effectively?
I hope that I don't come off as stalker-ish. But if there's a job that I'm really interested in, I'll do a number of things. First is I'll apply for the job. Then I will find that person on LinkedIn that I think, in some cases I have found the hiring manager. In some cases I have found the actual recruiter. And in some cases, I'm not really certain who to target. So I go up the chain and I hit like the head of talent acquisition or something, or head of that department. I send them a LinkedIn mail that says, hey, I have the perfect candidate for this job, me. And I tell them why. And then I tell them, this is why I'm a great candidate. And I've already applied for the job online. And then I put my links into my website that has work samples, and to my LinkedIn. That almost always works and gets me in the door. On the other end is, once I have these interviews, I will, I do a bomb video, and I create a quick little video that just says, thank you for your time. This is what I really liked about what we talked about, and why I'm excited for to work for your company. And by the way, I've added a link right down there in the email of one of my LinkedIn posts that I think would be relevant to them. Now I have, over 60 posts that I've done since, I think, March.
That are terrific.
Thank you. That I can really tailor to who I'm speaking to. So I will go through my list and sit there and say, that would be good for a hiring manager. That would be good for head of HR. That would be good for a CEO. And I had someone say to me, and then one other thing I did for a second interview for a hiring manager, and it was actually in person. Before I left, I slid across the table my 90-day plan. Here's my 90-day plan.
I like that.
Of what I'm going to do for your company and to get me up to speed in the first 90 days.
I love that.
So
Andi,
I am trying to stand out. Good.
And Andi, what is your feedback to that?
So I love it. There's several things. One, recruiters are used to stalking. That's part of our job. We electronically stalk people. True story, as a recruiter, I literally, so we were recruiting somebody in a small town in East Texas where my grandfather actually lived. And I called him. I'm like, hey, do you know so-and-so? Because I'm looking for him for this niche job. And he goes, no, but call Carol at City Hall. I call Carol at City Hall and get a phone number. We're not above stalking people. So, like we use some creativeness here. So
it's
I
true.
love that you're reaching out to people. There's some, services where you can go out and find emails and I love that approach. I love that you're being proactive. Companies hire solutions. They don't hire problems. They don't hire you because you need a job. They hire you because you solve their problems. And 100%. So what you're doing when you're like, here's a 90-day plan on how I can solve your problems. This is amazing. Like that sets you apart. The other thing I think you're doing that's working is you're attaching your portfolio that has your work examples. So only 10% of companies are responding with declinations, right? So that means 90% of the time when you apply for a job, you're not going to hear feedback. So one, you have to temper that expectation. However, what you've done is you've taken yourself out of the maybe pile. So yes, no, maybe. No is the trash can. Yes is I'm going to call you. And the maybe pile is that digital black hole, meaning I need more information here. I have more questions and maybe only gets contacted if yes doesn't work. So you're putting yourself in that yes column that puts you in the top 1% of candidates. And I love that.
And as a communicator, it's even more important that, because a lot of places are asking for your portfolio. Go to my link on LinkedIn that has all my writing for the past 6 months.
Absolutely. 100%. And being proactive, the main thing I took away is that everything you're doing is proactive. You're not waiting for them to ask. You're not, doing the wait and see. You're just putting it out there. You're being bold. I love the video idea. That's a new thing. I had somebody do that to me for the first time, send me a video thanking me. And I thought that was so cute. And she put like all these like little cartoons on it and stuff. It just made it super personal. And I thought it was so cute. And it was really something that grabbed my attention and stuck with me. I think
I throw a caveat in there?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. Here's what I will tell you about video. And people think I'm anti-video. I'm not. One, I'm not a huge fan of video for first time contact. So I like that she's using text.
Follow up. Yes.
But for follow up, I love it. And also there's two reasons I may not use a video and I would go to text. If you have a really dry personality where you have a hard time expressing emotion or passion, then sometimes video it won't play in your favor. Also, if you have communication challenges or if English is a second language, sometimes a video, again, can play against you. So just run your video by somebody who is going to give you fearless feedback about, yes, I think this is a great strategy for you. Susan has a great communication style and great personality for it. For her, I would absolutely recommend it. But there are some of my clients who I say, hey, pull back. I don't think the video is representing your best self.
100%. Yes. And again, yes, use it as Susan is for follow-up, not your initial contact. And don't do that weird voice message thing that you can do on LinkedIn now to communicate. Do not do that. It doesn't work all the time. B, not everybody knows how to use it. And C, you may have somebody like myself who has hearing problems and may have to listen to it 5 or 6 times. And then they're just irritated with you just right off the bat for doing this to them. So just send a text like Susan's doing, send an email, send a message directly. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have a connection to the person that you're trying to speak to, if you know somebody that does, if you see a mutual connection that you're comfortable reaching out to and asking for an introduction, do it. Do that because that comes off a lot better than just stalker mail, which there's nothing wrong. If that's the last resort, you do it. But otherwise, if you can get an introduction, do it. I want to talk about some of the funny don'ts for communication on LinkedIn and email. Okay. The first one, and you will hear me say this on almost every episode of the show, don't be weird. Okay? Don't be weird. Don't say and do weird things. Do not, if you don't know me. So I'm going to clarify. Okay? First of all, do not send a message that says, hello, period. That's it.
Absolutely. That's actually not a full sentence.
No, it's not. And it's weird. And then do not ask me how my life is going. I have literally had that happen 3 times this week. How is your life going? You don't know me. Why are you asking about my life? This is so weird. Don't do that.
Random.
It's so random. I had somebody ask me what the weather was like.
So
okay.
I keep a strategy called earn the ask, right? And this is, please send this to every salesperson on LinkedIn, earn the ask. So if you come out of the gate approaching me with a sales pitch, whatever you're asking me for, I always look at, have you earned the right to ask me that question? Right. So it's almost like this bank account principle. Do you have enough deposits into our mutually beneficial relationship to make that withdrawal? And if not, you 100%. Might need to participate in some of the posts that I make, or, make comments on that, engage in my activity before you just reach out and go for the kill and say, hey, I can solve all of your business problems, particularly for our, business to business sales. I literally miss important messages because I'm getting 40 to 50 spam messages a day. Yes. And I know business owners are really getting hit hard by everybody. And most often it's, hey, I can help you with your recruiting company. I'm like, I bet you can't, since I don't have one. And so,
yeah, I've been getting things for insurance companies.
Financial
nothing
planning,
on my financial planning. So we have a question real quick. So I want to get to. Speaking of weird, is it safe to mention to a potential employer that you have a stammer? Okay. My take on this, and then we'll let the other ladies answer this, is I believe whenever you have anything that could be construed as a disability, okay, like for me, I have a seizure disorder, right? So I wouldn't talk about that in an interview. I would mention it after I've gotten my offer and been hired as something like, oh, by the way, just so you know, this happens, no big deal, blah, blah, blah. I would not mention a stammer. If they hear it and they ask about it, you can, answer as you feel comfortable, although they're not really supposed to ask you about it, by the way. But you can answer as you feel comfortable. But really and truly, it's not relevant. It may be for like a phone customer service job, but even then, I've had people with stammers call me and it went just fine. So there's no reason to mention it. It doesn't affect your job performance. So I would just say there's no need. What about you, Andi?
So one thing I will tell you is I'm a big fan of addressing the elephant in the room. So if there's something that you're uncomfortable about, a lot of times with a stammer, it gets worse when you're nervous. So if you feel like it's going to be visible. So I'll use the example, like Catherine, you were talking about seizures. I have a really rare migraine disorder that paralyzes my left side. When I get a migraine, it'll look like I have a stroke. I don't bring that up. However, if I were to come into the interview and it was active and I look like I've had a stroke, I would tell them, hey, I don't always look like this. But, with a stammer, if it's going to be something that they can hear, you may even say, you know what, one of the challenges that I've overcome in my life is learning how to be successful and communicate effectively, even though you may hear that I have a little bit of stammer, and that potentially could be increased today because I'm super nervous about meeting you. I'm excited about this opportunity. So please bear with me through this.
Yes.
And so
that's a great approach. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's good. And I've done that too. I've done that one too. I've done both. Because I get
go ahead.
Mine are technically strokes, by the way. I have a similar kind of thing. So it's actually my TIA's advanced to seizures. So, and there have been episodes on the show where I went back and you could see my twitches and stuff like that. So I've had client conversations where I was like, my face is like, and I had to just, make a joke about it, like I'm melting on this side,
No worries
stuff like that. So just don't worry about my face. I don't, it's okay. It's no big deal. So that's
People
one approach
your
too.
response to it.
Yeah, if you are comfortable making a joke with Chad, which I just now saw who asked this, Chad. I know you're comfortable making a joke, honey. Just make that joke and just keep on rolling with it. Susan, you're the communications expert.
I think Andi's approach is perfect and spot on, because certainly as you go into a conversation with somebody and they have a stammer and they haven't told you, you recognize it. And because my daughter's former trombone teacher had a pretty bad stammer. But he never told us about it, but that's a different situation. I think that when you're in a situation where you could be more nervous and the stress makes it worse,
right,
to point it out in that way and how you overcame it is really fantastic.
Yeah. And use it as a victory story. As long as you're using it as a victory story, or making a joke, something like that. Don't bring attention like you're trying to get attention. And also don't say it in a way where they think you're setting them up to sue them. Yeah, because there are people that play that game. Trust me. Yeah. Oh, and ladies, I've been getting asked the pregnancy question a lot lately. I am very pregnant. How do I get a job? That's tough.
You may have
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is, because especially, I mean, if you're video, you're in luck. This time is for you, because you don't actually have to talk about that. I wouldn't stand up. But if you're in person, again, I'm all about addressing it and saying, you may have noticed I'm growing a human. Like, so,
there's no hiding it.
Exactly. I have every intention of working up until, whatever time, whatever arrangements that you have. But notice, or on that especially.
And I'm committed to coming back. I'm committed to coming back. Because that's what they're really worried about, ladies. It's not so much that little period of time right after you have the baby. It's, are you coming back?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And if there's any kind of a plan that you can put together, depending on how far along you are, if there's a plan that you can put together that say, hey, up until I leave, this is what I'm going to try to do. And then, how is my work going to be covered? I've already, I'll work out a plan. Just tell them that you are going to be very proactive about it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
And be realistic on that, and be honest with yourself on, okay, if I'm signing up to lead a system implementation that's going to take about 6 months and I'm due in 5, this may not be the right opportunity or the right time for this opportunity for me to go out on maternity leave in the middle of an implementation. That's not being discriminatory. That's saying at the go live, you're not available. So on that, be honest with yourself of saying, you know what? I may not be able to deliver everything that I would normally do if my family situation was not literally growing.
Right. And ladies, I mean, it's just part of life. It's just like with anything else, you just have to make choices based on what your capabilities. For instance, with my medical stuff, which I have I'm like an 80-year-old person. It's a funny story. I literally had an insurance person call me one time to say that there's no way they had my age right on my life insurance form. They thought I was like 70. Yeah, legit. So with all that, I don't take on projects that are going to require 70, 80 hours a week. Yeah. Okay. Because I'll end up in the hospital. So I love to work like that, side note, but I can't anymore. So just know where you're at in your life. So I have a story real quick before we get you off of here, Andi, that I want to tell. I want to get your take on it. And then we're going to get our next 2 guests on and get their take on it. This is a true story. This was told to me earlier this week by a candidate who said that he was going through the interview process. And by the way, he's over 55. Okay. He was going through the interview process. They were super excited, talking about altering the job for him. And, oh man, we have all these great plans for you. Goes through multiple stages. Gets on a Zoom call with the owner of the company, who immediately looks at him and says, wow, you've been around for a while, haven't you? They shortened the call. And basically immediately after, he got a, sorry, we're not interested. Wow. That's those faces y'all are making. That was my response. That was my response.
So there's the part of me that says you don't want to work for somebody like that. Right.
Well, true.
So there's that part of me that says, if you're going to be that person, I want to know during the interview so that I save us both some heartache. There's the other part of me that wants to commit a felony. So I'm working through that right now.
I'm processing my feelings.
I'm working through this right now. But so there's a couple of reasons where age comes in that may be a legitimate concern that you could actually overcome. If it's a fear that you are not willing to use new technology, you can address that. Right.
Mhm.
And so don't be afraid to call it out and just say, okay, since you noticed that I've been around a while, is that a concern for you? And I am all about putting people on spot, just like I end in every interview with, Catherine, do you have any reservations that I can speak to about hiring me for this role? That's how I end every interview. And it opens the door for honest dialogue. So if somebody's going to be rude enough to call it out, be bold enough to step back and go, okay, it sounds like that may be a concern for you. How can I help you resolve that concern?
And on that wonderful, wonderful note with a beautiful piece of advice. Oops, I just nearly knocked myself over here. Thank you, Andi, for finally joining us.
It's amazing. Yes. Anytime,
it was
guys.
so wonderful. Guys, please connect with Andi on LinkedIn. She is terrific. She is one of a kind, and you will get all of this awesomeness all the time. So connect with her.
Thank you.
See you later.
See you later. Bye.